Greetings, everybody. I hope this message finds you well today, and I thank you all for your recent collaboration, patience, and understanding as we work through this process of reopening our schools together. I want to provide you with a brief update today regarding the direction that the Rome City School District is headed based on the survey data that we're receiving currently from families and students, and talk a little about the pros and cons of the things that are to come in the coming weeks here. But first and foremost, the data that we are seeing from our survey at this current point in time is suggesting a strong need for the hybrid model of instruction pre-K-12 and or completely remote. Those are really the two options that we're being forced into, and so that's kind of where the conversation is going to lead today. Before I get into some of those details, I just want to announce that our community meetings will be held next week per the governor's request. We'll be holding our first meeting on Monday evening, August 17th at 7 p.m. via Zoom, and we'll get that address out to the community in the coming days. And then our final two meetings will be held on Wednesday, August 19th. We will hold one meeting at 2 o'clock p.m. in the afternoon, and our third and final meeting will be Wednesday evening at 7 o'clock p.m. And again, both of those meetings will be held via Zoom. More information to follow on the format of the meetings and how you can participate, so please stay tuned to our social media and other avenues. And talking about the options that we're faced with and the choices we have to make regarding, we've got basically two options: remote learning, which is all students learning remotely, and or hybrid learning, which is a portion of students learning in person and a portion learning at home. Both options provide many obstacles for the school district to overcome and try and figure out. However, as we discussed as an administrative team with our principals and our directors in consultation with the Board of Education, we feel strongly that as long as we maintain a focus on the safety and the health of our students, staff, and families, we think that we can provide an educational experience that is second to none to our students. A little bit of information about the conversations we're having and what's going into our decision making. We are looking at other school districts across the country that are currently opening. You will see some school districts are having some level of success with in-person learning, but you will also see many school districts across the country that have shut down after only one day. You'll see images and stories of districts across the country where students are not abiding by mask expectations and social distance expectations. So obviously those experiences do cause concern for us and how we would manage those in our community. There is a large concern about the asymptomatic people that are walking around as a positive COVID case right now. It's impossible to know if somebody is asymptomatic, and if we start bringing a ton of people back into large communal spaces, do we run that risk of spreading the virus through our community without even knowing who's asymptomatic? We can do as many temperature checks as we need to throughout the day. However, a temperature screening is not going to discover an asymptomatic individual within one of our facilities. What that leads us to then is talking about quarantine requirements and contact tracing. If you have not been a part of a family or a group of friends that have had to endure contact tracing and quarantine, you have not experienced the true scope of COVID at this point in time. The requirements for contact tracing and quarantine are extremely rigid, and they're fairly invasive. These are all coming from the Department of Health in New York State. The school district has nothing to do with this. However, if we have a suspected positive case in one of our buildings or schools, it will require every child within that classroom and staff member within a classroom to be quarantined. They will be contacted by the Department of Health. They will be undergoing contact tracing, which is pretty rigorous. One possible case within our school system within one classroom could quarantine as many as 400 to 500 people within our community. So we're weighing those concerns about whether or not it's safe to have in-person instruction of any form. There continues to be concerns about testing requirements. We know that the school district does not have the capacity nor the skilled staff to do testing on site, which is a concern for many people. It's a concern for the school district as well. However, we also continue to hear conflicting reports on whether or not testing is accurate. We've heard statistics that will tell you that 60% of negative tests are inaccurate, and you'll hear a reverse of that 60% of positive tests are inaccurate. So the accuracy of testing is also a concern as we deliberate on the best decision to make for our community. Clarity of guidance. As you've seen throughout the course of the past few weeks, there is a lack of clarity from both the State Education Department and the Department of Health relative to guidance on what we can and cannot do. A simple example of this is, are students required to wear masks and socially distance at the same time in the schools, or Can we have students wear masks but not completely socially distanced, social distance to the best of our ability? There's a lot of vagueness on what we're allowed to do in that regard, and so that is making the decisions a little bit more challenging for us to make here as we move into the coming school year. Staffing and scheduling for a hybrid model continues to be a big barrier. We can staff our building appropriately with the staff that we have. We can pull off the plan that we have written, which we feel is one of the best in the state in writing. However, to pull that plan off to fidelity, to make sure we can clean as frequently as we need to clean and as much as will make you comfortable, to make sure that the kids can receive both an in-person learning experience and a remote learning experience that is viable and sound, we would need to increase our staffing tremendously. And nursing as well, I don't know that we have enough nursing staff to pull off the amount of work that is going to be necessary. All of these things combined, if we had the financial resources at our disposal to afford increasing our staff significantly, I don't know that those staff members would be available for hire within this part of the state. Likewise, at this point in time, we all know that we need to be fiscally conservative, and simply adding 50 to 100 staff members probably is not a viable option for us moving into the school year. The last piece of the puzzle when it talks about hybrid and looking at what we want to do and what we can do is teaching and learning. Right now, what we're asking teachers to do is to consider a model in which they have to be able to teach remotely at some point during the day, preferably not simultaneously as they're teaching students in person. And at the same time, we're asking them to learn an entirely brand new set of health safety parameters and guidelines that they've never experienced before. Essentially, teachers are being asked to figure out in a few short weeks how to do an entirely new job with a whole lot of new questions that they're going to be asking. Our staff have a lot of questions, and the parameters and the rules of engagement have changed. Coming to school will not look like we've ever experienced it in the past. There's a whole lot of new requirements that students and staff are going to have to face, and if we focus on health and safety of our students and staff, education is going to take a back seat, and furthermore, remote learning is going to take a third seat in the vehicle when we're talking about where our list of priorities are. Our goal as an educational institution is to provide the best education that we can possibly provide to all students, regardless of how that education is delivered. We do have concerns about the hybrid model for a lot of reasons. We have concerns about remote learning as well, as we all lived through the spring and we saw where our deficiencies were relative to that. However, when we talk as an administrative team with our directors, our assistant superintendents, our principals, myself, and then in consultation with our Board of Education, we really feel that as a district, our commitment is to educating children, providing a sound learning experience and education, while keeping in mind the health, safety, and welfare of our students, our staff, and our families. Without being able to ensure complete safety within our buildings, given what we're looking at today and what we're tasked with trying to put together and deliver in a few short weeks, I am announcing that the Rome City School District is going to be completely remote as we open the school year beginning in September of 2020. Our plan for this option is that we will be remote for a period of 6 weeks, so roughly the end of October. We will begin in the beginning of October to reevaluate the COVID situation both regionally and throughout the state and country to make a determination if we need to extend remote learning longer than that, or if it's safe to start bringing kids back into the buildings in early November, given that we will have much more time to develop schedules that work for families, schedules that work for teachers, schedules that work with our students. This decision does not come lightly. I want to reiterate that as a collective team, we feel that the safety and the health of our students and community is of the utmost importance. Knowing that there's asymptomatic cases walking around all over the place, knowing that we can't completely manage social distancing, we can't control human behavior. There are concerns about whether students can wear masks all day long, if staff members can teach effectively with a mask on all day. There's too many questions to be answered to make in-person learning at this point in time safe and viable. For that reason, we want to maintain the safety and the health of our students, staff, and families. We are opting for a completely remote model. That decision does not come without other things that need to be addressed. We still have questions to ask and answer, such as childcare issues throughout the community. We are working with childcare providers to ensure that we can provide childcare and make sure families that need childcare have access to that as we move through the beginning of the school year. We know that there's equitable access issues that we learned from the springtime. We continue to work through families and students having devices to access the internet, as well as families themselves being able to access the internet, and we'll be working through those issues as we move through the coming weeks. It's also worth noting that those two issues also are presented in a hybrid model. So access to childcare, access to technology were not going to be a problem that we weren't going to have to overcome regardless. It's just a little bit different if we are completely remote. And another topic of concern that will continue to be discussed and looked at is the access to supported learning students and whether or not they need to have some form of in-person learning to be able to meet the needs of their IEPs. We understand that this decision and announcement probably will cause some stress and grief, but we hope that you can join with us and understand that our first and foremost goal is the safety, the health, and the welfare of our students, staff, and community. I look forward to continuing these discussions with our staff. I look forward to continuing to help Rome become the best district in New York State. We hope and trust that you understand our decision making and that we are looking out for the best interest of the health and safety of our community. I will say what helps me figure out which is the best path to go, whether I agree with it on a personal level or not, is my responsibility to my job is to understand that every day 6,000 people's lives are in my hands. And normally it's an educational job that I have to worry about education and learning. And with the COVID virus, it becomes different. And now I have to focus on, are my decisions going to lead to somebody becoming ill or possibly death? And that's a very hard decision and concept to grapple with sometimes. And for that reason, our leadership team would much prefer to err on the side of caution, give things some time to develop and breathe, and know that regardless of the decisions we make, our kids will be educated, and our staff, our students, and our community will be safe and healthy through the process. I thank you all for your time and understanding today. As always, please reach out with any questions that you may have. You can always email our direct email for reopening questions, rcsdreopening@romecsd.org, or find more information on our website. Thank you all, and please be safe.